Okay, hello everybody. We're just getting started. It is about noon here on the East Coast, and I know that we're welcoming people from around the country. So as you get settled in, we're going to give people another 30 seconds or so and get started with our program. If you want to, in the chat, you can put where from around the country you're joining us from. All right, you've proven that you are definitely covering the country. All right, we're going to get started. So hello and welcome. I am Kara Cohen. I'm with the AARP Massachusetts office. And this is our third webinar that is part of our Thrifty Thursday series that we're doing this month, this March. And next week at this time, we're offering retirement planning strategies for today and tomorrow. And then the last Thursday of the month, we're offering a webinar on finances for caregivers, making sense of caregiving. So if you want to check those out, you can go to aarp.org/MA and see them on our website, or you can also go to aarp.org/nearyou. So we maintain a deep focus on health and financial security of people 50 and over and their families, and you'll see that reflected in all of the offerings and also in our advocacy. And I want to share a little bit about our advocacy so that you know what we're fighting on for you. We're advocating across the state and all the way to the United States Capitol to protect Medicare, Social Security, and your financial security. Last year, AARP led the fight to lower prescription drug prices, and we won. Millions of older Americans are now starting to save a little money on their medications, and we're hoping to get a little further. Here in Massachusetts, we continue to fight on a range of issues, including pushing for a caregiver tax credit to help defray out-of-pocket costs. These are things that other state offices may also be working on or have already gotten passed, by the way. In Massachusetts, we're also working to improve the quality of care in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities by increasing minimum nurse staffing ratios, and also improving the state's preparedness and response to infectious disease outbreaks. We're also working on removing certain restrictions related to a senior property tax deferral. And finally, we're also looking to expand the core plan, which is the 401k savings plan for employees of small nonprofits. And we will keep fighting for all these issues that affect our members in Massachusetts and across the country. For more information on this, you can go to our website, aarp.org/MA, or your state's website. And here in Massachusetts, we have a virtual lobby day coming up on April 4th. That's a virtual lobby day. So if you are interested in that, please consider joining us, and you can register online. So remember, follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay further informed. We post about all of our events and our wins and also our calls to action. Today, as you think of questions you want to ask, please put them in the Q&A. I'll be looking in the chat as well if you happen to put them there instead, but try to keep them to the Q&A. And we'll try to get to most of them before the hour is up. And after this webinar, we will be sending out the recording and the slides, as well as a resource page that our speaker has prepared for you. There'll also be a brief survey. Please respond to that survey. It's always helpful to know how you appreciate what we're doing and if you have any feedback for improvements. So today's presentation is being given by Martin Booker, who is one of my colleagues at the national office. He is on the financial resilience team at National, and he leads the financial education initiatives focused on Social Security, budgeting, and investing. Before joining AARP, he worked also in the nonprofit sector where he developed this passion, and you're going to really get a sense for his passion around this. He developed a passion for helping people improve their money habits. That's what you're here for today. He has a master's degree in social work from the University of Connecticut and earned a certificate in financial planning at Georgetown University. So we're grateful to have Martin with us today. We're grateful that you've been able to make the time to be with us live. Martin, take it away.
Thank you, Cara. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. And hello to everyone in the chat. I see people from everywhere, which is exciting. It's good to see you all. So I'm glad you're here. Glad you took some time around your lunch hour to just to hang with me and then talk about money. So today we're talking about, as you know, part of Thrifty Thursdays. So we're talking about savings. So first thing I'll say is anyone in the chat, I always say when it comes to finances and personal finance, there are typically four types of people when it comes to finances. There's the money growers, the money savers, the money makers, and the money givers. And I think that we're all, you can be in different categories, but we're all naturals kind of in one of those spaces where we typically are stronger in one space, or we're kind of in one space at a specific time. So typically, if you're, I'll kind of just touch on each of them. And when I come down your lane, just write me in the chat, just so I can know who's in the chat. So for the money makers, you're typically the person who, since you were most of your life, you were always someone who would go after money making opportunities. You're usually the high income earner. You're the person who can, you have the entrepreneurial endeavor, or even if it's not entrepreneurship, when it comes to work, you tend to negotiate high salaries. You're going to go after more and more money. You don't mind switching jobs to make more money. You are a money maker. You naturally, that's what you do. You take on opportunities to make money. You may have side hustles that are making money, but you just tend to gain and gain and gain. So that's kind of where you are. Any money makers in the audience? So if that's you, or if that's kind of how you've the thing that you've been most natural at over your career or over your lifetime, then just you can just say me in the chat. My grandma, she's a money maker. She's one of those, even in retirement, she's buying properties and renting them out. She's trading money in the stock market. She's always doing things to make money. In her career, she was an entrepreneur, and she's typically she's one of those money maker types. So that's one. So that's the typical profile. I'm going to give you, and that's always a strength. I'm going to give you one of the best opportunities for the person that's the money maker as well. For each one, I'll give you some opportunities. For the money maker, you're someone who you don't typically, the money maker doesn't save money well, because you're the person who's naturally, you know that I can always make more. So you're willing to make more or go get more. So when it comes to saving, that's not usually where you focus. You'll spend it because you know you're going to get it right back. So that's usually the money maker. All right, the money saver. You're the person who you're thrifty. You're going to hold on to your dollars. You typically have the larger savings account, or even in your regular checking account. Money just sits there because you're not going to spend it. You're going to hold on to your money. You're going to save it. And so you're the person with a really nice size checking and savings account. And you, in some cases, you don't even have to budget because you know that you're not going to spend all the money that you just brought in. So that's the saver. The saver is that person that holds their dollars. You're thrifty. You may, you're going to buy things at a discount, but you're also just not going to spend all your money. So I've met with a lot of people who are good at saving. We'll go and create a budget, and they'll just say, hey, I really don't have to use this because I'm not going to spend my money anyway. Here's some save. We got some savers in the room. All right. Now here's the opportunity for the saver. So usually with the saver, you're the person who you miss out on opportunity cost. So you're not going to invest a lot. You won't grow your money as much because you're like, hey, I've been saving. I hold on to my money. So the last thing that I'm going to do is risk it in the stock market, or risk it on or put it into some risky investment that might make my money drop, right? So we know some investments can grow, but they can also lose at the same time, right? And for the saver, you're naturally someone who's not gonna take as many risks because you're like, hey, I've been saving. I've been stacking up my money. So saving is a little tough. Yeah, that's another good point, Rick. Or if you do save, in some cases, if you have investment accounts, sometimes you won't go towards a riskier investment because you're like, hey, I've been saving up my money. I'm not going to take it, I'm not going to put it into something very risky. So that's where the saver, one of the opportunities for the saver is to invest a little bit more, because you have the opportunity to grow your money. Now let's talk about the grower. If you're someone who grows your money, then usually every opportunity you have, you like to put your money into something that's going to grow it and send your money to work. So naturally, I'm a grower. When I get money, it's rare that you'll see me just hold it in a savings account. I like to take the risk, and I like to take appropriate risk and calculated risk. But I'm going to put my money into something that can grow it. So I'm going to put it into some real estate. I'm going to put it into some stocks, some type of investments, because I want to see my money make me money. I like to look at my money as employees. So the grower, you tend to take the risk with your money, and you're going to put your money into something that's going to grow it. Now, the opportunity for the grower is that we tend to not save well. We things like emergency savings or just savings accounts. We don't see that money growing, so we can tend to take risk even with the money that we should be saving. So it's one of those situations where, for the grower, you may want to have that foundational saving so that if you need to tap into some money, it's going to be there, especially when there's a lot of market fluctuation. And then lastly is the giver / spender is what I tend to say. No, not a problem at all, Rick. I love to hear it. We love to see it and see what people are doing. So yeah, you're definitely a grower. You're taking some risk, Rick. The last one is definitely the spender / giver. You're the person with the bleeding heart. You're going to always give. Family, no, they can come to you if they're going to reach out to you if there's a need, if there's some way that there's a need, or if there's a charity to give to, or if there's a family member in need, you're going to be the one to show up and you're going to give. You're going to make sure that you're helping everyone, because for you like to serve. I see we got some givers in the room. So you want to make sure. So in that case, for the giver, your opportunity a lot of time is in saving. You want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, or that you're holding on to some money just in case you need it, right? So there are those opportunities where you may have to make sure that, like they say, you got to put on your air mask first. If you're on a plane, you want to put on your air mask before you can help someone else. So we want to make sure that you're taking care of you in all cases, and that you have the appropriate amount for saving. You have the appropriate amount that you need for your situation in any case. So those are just the 4 pieces to it. I see, okay, we got some people who are in a couple of different categories, but you always know, my thought is that we always have something that we're natural at, right? It's something that it comes easy to us. It's what we do first. And then the other things, while we still do them, there's always going to be that one muscle. I always say, if they're our money muscles, it's the muscle that you flex the most is the one that you'll use between giving, saving, growing, and spending and making money. So we have one that we're best at, and then there's all these other ones as well. So good to see. I see we got a lot of people in the room, a lot of different types of people, which is great, because we all have something. And as a mentor always told me, so we play to our strengths and we staff our weaknesses. So for everyone in the room, if you whichever one you're best at, you continue to use that one to your advantage. You do what you have to do in that space. But for the other ones, that's where you may want to seek help. You get a financial professional maybe who can help you through it. You work with someone else who's really good in a different space, so that you make sure that you can kind of be a little well-rounded, because if these are muscles, then we want to make sure that we're well-rounded. We got our cardio, we got our strength, we got we got our legs, we got our core. We need all of these things to be healthy and to be strong. So we want to make sure that we're touching all the categories well, and we have a balance. So something to think about while and it's good to just ground yourself in knowing what you're best at, where you stand. So as we go through this presentation, we're talking about saving specifically. So for all the savers, I saw some savers in the room, you're going to recognize this. This will be good. These will be things that you know. And in the chat, I'm going to want you to share some examples and give us some feedback, because I love to get some examples. We learn from each other. We're going to keep learning from each other. So I want to make sure that you can share some things that are best for you, or some of the things that you've done really well in the chat throughout this presentation. And for some other folks, you may be able to gain some information throughout this to help you to be either a better saver. Now, with this presentation, we're not giving financial advice. We're not giving any legal advice. This is general information, general guidance, and as you know, personal finance is very personal. So it's very hard for me to be able to give you direct advice without looking through and knowing more about your story and your situation. It's a very personal thing for all of us. So I'm gonna provide some general guidance. It's going to be some helpful guidance. It's going to be some really good tips and tricks, but in most cases, it won't be financial advice. If you do need financial advice, I'm going to share a great resource at the end that's for helping you to find a financial advisor or financial professional that will work well for you. So I'll give you that information. AARP has a phenomenal tool around finding financial professionals, and in some cases you can find some for little to no cost as well. So I'll make sure that you get that info. But and feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll answer them as best we can. So what are we going to talk about today? As I mentioned, daily ways to save. So we're talking about, inflation's high. We're seeing it, there's so much still happening, and so much uncertainty. So we want to figure out, sometimes it's like, how do I get control over my dollars, my day-to-day dollars? And what can I do for me just day to day to just make some really good steps to help me to just kind of make sure that my wallet or my pocketbook is staying in a place that's well balanced for me. So I'm going to talk about it in 3 different categories. We'll talk about lowering debt, because we can always save money when we have a little less debt. I'm going to talk about some lifestyle adjustments, some of the things that we can do day to day that's going to help us with our finances. And some of the lifestyle things that we do. And we're going to also talk about some utility bills. I got some really cool things that I do fairly often to get some of my bills lowered, and I want to make sure that you know what they are. So let's dive into some content. And remember, use that Q&A tool to ask any questions. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A tool. And we're looking at that Q&A tool, and we'll make sure that we can respond to you there. But then also, as you're using the chat, that's what we'll use to just engage with each other and have some conversation. And feel free to talk to me as much as you want. I love a good dialogue. So some of the ways to save, some of the things to think about. So let's start with debt. As we know, the more that we lower our debt, the more we can increase our margin. I remember there was a point when I had a significant amount of credit card debt, and I would probably have about 4 credit cards, some maxed out, some close to the max. And what I noticed is that just paying those monthly minimums, they were getting higher and higher. They were is a significant part of my budget. And when I would look up, I knew that if I pay this down, then this could significantly bring in more margin for me. So the margin, that's just the difference between what you bring in and what you spend. So I always say, for us, we got to stay close to our numbers. So the 3 things you want to always know when it comes to your budget is how much you bring in, how much you pay out, and you want to know the difference. And that difference is what makes a big difference for us, because that's what we use to pay down debt. That's what we use to save, to grow our money and things like that. So increasing our margin, it's just that the margin is going to be that difference between what you make every month, what you spend, and what you spend every month. That difference is going to be your margin. So the more bills we pay down, the more debt we reduce, we reduce or eliminate, the more margin that we have. So that's the more money that we can save each month. So if you look at if you have credit card debt, if you're paying off some personal loans, just remember, the moment that those loans are gone, you get every dollar of that bill back into your pocket every month. So it's never a bad thing to lower your debt. And do that. So one of the ways that I paid my credit cards down, so the first thing I did is I took my credit cards out of my wallet. I stopped carrying them on me every day, because what I noticed is that when I carried my credit cards on me, then now I had another option of a way to spend money. And what I would do is just run up more debt, because I would use that option sometimes just to make sure that my bank account wasn't low, right? So I didn't want my bank account too low, so I would just put it on a credit card. And I noticed that became an option for me. But the moment that I took the credit cards out of my wallet, I was in a position where I didn't have that option anymore, and I would just lower my debt more and more by not having those credit cards on me. So it's one of the things to think about. Leaving your credit cards at home is a great way to just reduce the amount of debt that you're going to take on and the amount of times that you're going to use your credit cards. Because if it's not there, it's one less option that you have. That's one of those things to think about. And I'll say it's one of the things to think about when you are someone who will turn to credit cards a lot. If you have that discipline and you don't mind just spending cash, then feel free to do so. One of the things I mentioned is I always said there were three types of credit card users. There's the very disciplined person who can use their credit cards for everything. You can use a credit card. You can pay, use a credit card for everything, pay the full balance off, get credit card points, use those points to your advantage, and then pay the full bill off at the end of the month. And you're carrying you're paying no interest. You're keeping your credit cards manageable. There are some people who can do that, and you're very disciplined with that. That works because in that case, you can use it to your advantage. Then there's the kind of disciplined person, right? And for the person that's kind of disciplined, you'll use a credit card. But in your case, the best way is to maybe not have the credit card on you. Maybe set up one bill to each credit card so that you're getting the activity and you're paying it off every month, but you're not carrying the credit card on you so that you're not using it for extra swipes. You're just paying one thing, and then you may set it up for auto pay to pay that bill off. And it could be a small bill. So that's one of those things that won't hurt you. And then there's the person who just does not have very good discipline. You're the person who, if you have a credit card on you, you're going to swipe it, you're going to use it, you're going to max it out. In that case, you don't want to have the credit cards. You may want to cut them up. You may want to put them in an ice block and freeze them, but you want to keep them away from you, because without the discipline, you're going to spend it you're going to just use it up. I'll tell you, the dangerous combination is a high credit card limit and very little discipline. That's a tough one to have. So as I mentioned, with discipline, you can enjoy those savings. I know people who use credit cards to pay everything, and the credit cards pay them back, or they take trips, but it does not work if you're also paying interest on your credit cards. So, because then you're paying the same money. If you're carrying a balance, you're going to pay interest, and the money that you're supposed to save, you're actually still spending it on credit cards. So that's just something to think about. Paying down debt, that's one of the first ways to save yourself money. You're paying yourself back by paying off your credit cards or paying down other debt. So if you do have some debt, you have your options of how to pay it down. So if you're one of those people who are trying to figure out a debt reduction plan, remember there's what they call the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. These are ways that you can lower your debt on a credit card. So with the snowball, you're lining up all your credit cards by balance. So take the ones with the lowest balance first, and you line them up, and you just start to pay them off. Chip away at these credit cards so that you're not paying interest. So that you pay the minimum balance on all of them, but you pay additional money towards the one with the lowest balance until it's gone. Once that credit card's gone, you take the money that you were paying towards that credit card, you move it to the one with the next lowest balance, and you start to pay that one down. So what you're doing is you're creating a snowball, and it's getting bigger and bigger as you pay those credit cards down. So, using them and paying them down is a great way to, you stop using them all, but then you pay them down as a way to give yourself motivation. Once you see but one balance gone, that gives you motivation to move to the next one. Now with the avalanche, that's the other model. And with the avalanche, what you're doing is you're paying off the credit card with the highest interest rate first. So you line them up by interest rate, and you attack the one with the highest interest rate first. Now, by doing this, you're going to actually save more money in the long run. But a lot of times you don't have that same motivation of seeing balances disappear, because you might have one with a high credit card with a high interest rate, but also a high balance. And now you're chipping away at that one for a very long time, and you're not seeing that motivation of some of the debt disappearing. So it's one of those things to think about. They've done studies. I think Harvard did a study on it, and they came to find out that the snowball is a better method because people get motivation is what's going to drive people to really feeling good about paying down that debt. So that's something to think about as well as how you can eliminate your credit card debt or any debt. So that's something to think about. If you're in that position and you want to work those credit cards down to put money back in your pocket, this is a way to think about it. If you have some other debts, some personal loans, some other loans, then you can line them all up and start chipping away at them. And then as those bills disappear, remember that's now cash flow that's back in your pocket. So that's our first way to save, is to eliminate some of our debt. All right, now let's start thinking about some of the other things we could do. And I see some great dialogue in the chat. Thanks for telling us about some of the things that you're doing. Like we said, using a debit card. Some people prefer to use cash. Whatever makes most sense for you, whatever's safest for you, you do want to make sure that you're using that. So, like we said, having a credit card, it's not always a bad thing, but I always say with credit cards, it's kind of like fire, right? With fire, we know that fire can be a great thing for us, right? We can use it to heat up our home. We can use it to cook a meal. We can use it for a lot of wonderful things. But then, in the same token, if we get out of hand with it, or if it gets out of control, the same fire can be used to burn down a village, right? It can burn down a house if it's used in the wrong way. It's the same thing with credit and credit cards. We have to use it in the right way, but to benefit us significantly. But if it gets out of hand, it can put us in a lot of trouble. So make sure that you're using them in a way that's beneficial for you. All right, so let's talk about and remember, use that Q&A tool if you want to put some questions into the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. But feel free to keep having dialogue in the chat as well. But if you have some questions you want to answer, use that Q&A tool. All right, so let's talk about some lifestyle adjustments, some of the things that we can do for daily ways to save money. So when we're thinking about savings, some of the things that first thing we look at is dining out. So here's just a quick, it's something that we all know, but it's something that you may not think about. So with dining out, breakfast is cheaper than lunch, which is cheaper than dinner. So usually, the earlier the meal, the cheaper the meal, right? We may be able to get breakfast for $5 to $7 or $5 to $10. Then lunch may cost us somewhere between $8 to $12 or $8 to $15. Now dinner, on the other hand, we're paying $15 to $20, sometimes higher than that for a meal, right? So we know that the earlier the meal, the cheaper it can be. So, breakfast dates, that's always a good way to save some money. If you want to go on a date, have a date night plan, or, eating out is something that you tend to do. One of the things, we don't want to take away from our joy, right? So we want to be able to enjoy things that we want to enjoy, but we have to just make sure that we do them in a way that's going to be productive for us. So you may still eat out, but maybe you decide to do a cheaper meal. You go on a lunch date, or you go for a breakfast date, or you just take yourself out. If you're doing a celebratory meal, you go do it at lunch instead of dinner, or you go eat breakfast for dinner, right? And you know that you're going to get a cheaper meal. So it's just one of those things to keep in mind that you could use. The other thing is discount dining. As much as you can, taking advantage of lunch specials and couponing. I remember when I worked at one place, and we used to eat at one of the places downstairs, and we would just go online, and they would have discounts on their website. They would have coupons on their website. So we print them out. And we print them out for the whole office, and we'd all go down and take advantage of the discounts. But, sometimes those are some of the things that you can do to just make sure that you're saving some money, that you're taking advantage of the discounts that's being offered, is that discount dining. Oh yeah, I'm seeing in the chat. Yep. So breakfast. Oh yeah, breakfast is starting to go up in price, Michelle. I do know that. But some of those ways that we can take advantage of just getting our meals for cheaper is a way to help out. And then going to places that have large portions. So we know some places they're going to provide a pretty hefty breakfast, more than we can eat. And in those cases, splitting that meal down the middle, it can help. Or, having, I love getting a nice size meal that's going to become 2 meals for me. So, and that's always a helpful thing to do, right? So when it comes to getting a big meal where I know that it's a 2-day meal, now that $13 that I spent has been split in half. So that's always a good thing. It became $6.50 a piece, as opposed to me spending $13 on one meal. So large portions can always help you out. So that's some of the things to think about. So for those folks that like to dine out, think about that. Finding those places where you can get some discounts, or get maybe a buy one, get one. That's going to always help you. And then eating an earlier meal in the day, that's going to be always going to work in your benefit. All right, living and lifestyle adjustments. All right, so this one, I know some people are like, hey, I would never do this, or you may not want to consider it, but shared housing. So, and for a lot of us, we may have lived the way we've lived for most of our lives. So we like the idea of living the way that we want to live. But in some cases, if you were able, just think about it, if you had enough space and you could rent out your basement and make some money, let's say you wanted to just kind of get some more, you wanted some more, some money for, you wanted some additional money for, to add to retirement. You wanted to just make sure that you had a little more cash flow. There could be, a way that you can kind of, rent out some of your space and share some of your housing in order to make more money. So that's one option. Renting out a room. During the pandemic, a lot of children moved back in. Got a child with a full-time job, they can pay some of the rent and kind of take some of the burden off. That could be a helpful way to do it, right? What we call house hacking is where they'll tend to rent out parts of their house and have a lot of their mortgage or their rent paid by other people, who's renting out some of the space. Because in some cases, hey, if you're an empty nester and you got a lot of space, you could rent some of that out. And if you don't want people in, hey, maybe you make it storage, right? Allow people to kind of move some stuff in and they pay you a small storage fee, but you could use some of that space to make yourself some money because you have so much space. There's even now, if you have a swimming pool, there's a site. It's called, there's sites that you can go on to rent out your swimming pool for people to kind of just come in and have a party. If they want to have like a small gathering and you had the pool that you're not using, but it's back there, you could rent out your pool. So, and you could look up something like that, just rent out my swimming pool and something, you can see what's out there for you to do so. But there are ways that you can make money with your space, that you have. I have a friend, they have a really nice garden in their backyard. It's a beautiful layout. And so one of the things that they did is they put it on, there was a site that they found where they could rent out their backyard for people to have like small fundraisers or small donor events. And you get to pick the event, so you can make sure that it's the type of event that you want. You can set the rules. You could say no heavy drinking, no more than 10 people. You set the parameters. You could say you have to have security on site, or we have to be able to monitor. You set the rules so that you can make sure that it's done the way that you want it. But they would allow small gatherings in their backyard, in their unused space, because it was so nicely set up, so that they could just make additional money. So, that's a part of house hacking. You got this beautiful space, you can set it up and allow people to rent space. You may have people do community gardens, whatever you choose, right? You could use some of your unused space for some of these great things. And while we know, if you're in a case where you just want to make a little money, it may be a sacrifice to have someone in your space or have someone using part of your space. But in some cases, it's a necessary sacrifice, right? You're using it to save, you're using it to prepare while you, and then once it's done, you kind of get to the savings amount that you want, you can stop completely. You don't have to no longer continue doing it. So something to think about, sharing your space in some way. You sharing it to make money, sharing the inside, maybe just sharing the outside, whatever you choose. But you set the rules, you set the parameters, and allow someone to help pay down some of your bills or help pay some of your mortgage. The other thing for daily savings is grooming. So if you find a local cosmetology school in your area, hair school, nail school, these places, they'll tend to do grooming for very low cost. And in a lot of cases, these are very talented people, right? So you can get a nice hair trim, nice haircut for half the price that you would pay for someone who's already finished schooling. And, so it's a great way to save some money on some of the grooming techniques that you do. Find a massage school. You might be able to get some, someone who's trying to get their hours and trying to learn. You may be able to get some discounted pampering done by doing that. So, and that's a good one, Jeffrey. Also giving yourself haircuts, right? So you can take some tutorials. Now they sell a lot of guided tools that can help you to kind of shape yourself up or to trim your own hair so that you don't mess up. And these can be helpful things to use to save some money. Now let's talk utility bills. So one of the things, lowering your utility bills, I always say it's a great thing to aim for. Insurance, it may be cell phone bills, things like that. I have a rule every year. I make a phone call at least once a year. Sometimes I'll do it twice, but I'll call my phone company, And I'll look at all my other bills, and I'll just see who can I call, and I'll just simply just say, hey, my bill's a little high. What can we do to lower this bill? And when I tell you, every time I do it, I'm a value customer, and I'm always valued because I pay my bills on time. They'll tell me, hey, as a value customer, we'd love to try to find you a better plan. And this works well with things like cable. It works with cell phones, and they'll always find me a cheaper bill. Internet services, they'll find a way to lower my bill and give me a better plan. And sometimes as much as $40 a month, I'm getting my bill lowered. So and when you do that, I always say you got to, consistently be paid on time. Pay on time, but then you also have to be willing to walk away, So if they tell me, hey, there's nothing I can do, that's okay. I'll find a company who has a better plan for me. So, that's something that you can always think about, but then also looking into some of the you could look into some of the discounts that you may be able to get through a workplace or through some of the other services or companies that you work with. Look at your AARP discounts and see who you can get a discount with in those ways. Now, having a contract. So signing up for a contract, one of the things that I do is I won't sign up for long-term contracts, because if I need to, I won't sign up for long-term contracts with things that are amenities and not necessities. Because if I don't need it, I want to be able to walk away whenever I need to walk away, right? If my income slows down, or for some reason my income is lowered, I want to make sure that I can then just say, hey, I can no longer pay this. I need to end this contract, without knowing, I need to end this service, without being in a 2-year contract and having to pay fees for early termination fees and things like that. The other thing is, shared cell phone plans. If you're able to get on a plan with a family plan, right? Sometimes a family plan comes out cheaper for everyone, and then everyone just kind of splits their part and send their money, as opposed to everyone having individual plans. That can be helpful. And then using some of these companies that aren't as known, right? So we have some of these companies like Consumer Wireless, or companies that you may hear about through some other stores that aren't our big box companies. In a lot of cases, they're using the same towers as some of the big companies, but having those smaller companies, you're getting much smaller cell phone bills. So that's one of those things you want to think about. You can get data, you can have text messages, you can still have your phone calls, but much cheaper cell phone plans than some of the big companies. And I'm seeing some of y'all in the chat, you're talking about some of the ways that you've saved. So yep, that's a good one. Car insurance. Just call the agent and say, hey, this bill's a bit high. Is there anything you can do about this? And in a lot of cases, once you're on that phone, they're willing to talk to you about all the discounts and all the things that you could possibly do. So you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of those. And you've already been doing it in the chat. Y'all have been really helpful at helping each other. So I want to hear some more. What's your best savings tip? What's something that you do day to day to save money? Talk to me in the chat. I know this isn't a shy group. Y'all are sharing all of the tips. All right, so I see a good one that just came in from Michelle, dropping cable. So using some of those streaming services, it looks like, you get an antenna and use some streaming services, and you're saving a lot of money. That's a good one, Mary. Using a library. And I'll tell you, I'll use the library apps, and I can rent books for very cheap prices, right? So I'm renting a book instead of buying a book. Because half the times you read it once and then you just kind of leave it on the shelf, right? If you don't give it away, it just sits there. So I can read it, give it back, and I've saved me a lot of money doing so. Oh, that's a good one, Tasha. The Goodwill outlet. So that's a good place to go and shop. And I always tell you, Tasha, I worked in a thrift store once. And after working in a thrift store and seeing how many unused clothes come into the thrift store, and even the used ones that are in great condition, I told myself, you should not buy another brand new shirt ever, because I was getting shirts for $2 and $3, brand new, that someone probably paid $20, $30 for and didn't wear it. It sat in their closet, and then it came to me. So, sometimes patience, I always say patience is undefeated. If you just wait, you can almost get anything for a good price. Okay, going to Savers. I see if you're in Massachusetts, go to Savers. They say that's a good one. Ways to save on electricity. So I'm seeing some good ones. Oh yeah, Karen, cash back. And like we said, as long as you got that discipline with those credit cards, you can get you can do really good with cash back on credit cards. I'm seeing some good cell phone plans that are coming through, unlimited for 25 a month with auto pay. That's a pretty good cell phone plan. Um, okay, so yeah, y'all got some great tips coming in. I tell you, I knew the best tips were going to come from y'all. Oh yeah, smart. So man, Mary, I'm sure that keeps your electricity bill down by just charging with some of the public chargers for electric vehicle. All right, so these some great savings tips coming in. Y'all are definitely giving some good ones. So with that, I want to just keep going. I'm gonna share some other points and keep those tips coming in the chat because those are some good ones. And use that Q&A feature if you want to ask questions, and we'll get to those shortly. So some of the other ways to save. So when we think about emergency savings accounts, so for our savers, you're probably good at this. They always say keep 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses, your monthly expenses saved, just in case there's an emergency. So here's the good thing about an emergency account. So with an emergency savings, this is going to keep you from having to turn to a credit card when you have an emergency that comes up. So thinking about, keeping that emergency savings account, it really is helpful because when something happens, and things will happen, right? We've all seen emergencies come up that we weren't expecting. When it comes up, you know that you have some money that you can turn to save. Now, 3 to 6 month worth, as I mentioned, they say 3 to 6 months is the right amount to save for an emergency. The 3 to 6 months of your expenses, but we know that that can be a lot of money, right? And that's a lot to save up at once. So here's where you start. If you you need to save. I want you to track some of your most expensive items that could possibly break down, right? So HVAC system, a tire, 4 tires, having to get a major car repair. I want you to get the expenses. How much is that going to cost if you were to calculate that out? Now, I want you to start with saving up one of the smaller amounts first. So if it's 1 tire, right? If it's $200 for a tire, then save up enough for 1 tire first, and then start saving for 2, and then 3. And then once you have your money saved for a tire, then go to your next expense. If it's an HVAC system and it's going to cost you $4,400, $6,500 to fix, then start aiming towards that. So hold that tire money and then start saving towards your next expense. So identify an expense first and save for that, and then continue to save towards your 3 months or your 6 months worth of expenses. But it's a good way to kind of target something and work towards a goal to save up for your emergencies. And then you want to get started on your spending and saving up for your emergency account. You want to have your budget first. Have your budget, get you a great budget, have that in order, and then start to save towards those amounts. But then you can also look and see, hey, what else can I reduce? I'll tell you, the best thing about a budget is the awareness that it gives you. When I looked at my budget and I saw what I was spending on certain things, the first thing I thought is, oh, I have to get rid of that, or I'm spending way too much money here. And it's a good way to just kind of look at it. It's like a mirror. It's a mirror of your spending. And then sometimes you look in that mirror and you say, you know what, I don't like what I'm looking at. And you're going to start to reduce some things or start to work on some things. So it's something to think about when it comes to do your budget first and then start to save those emergency funds. When it comes to saving money, I always like this order that we talk about. You earn your money, then you save your money, then you start spending. So savings, they say pay yourself first, save first. So after your company pays you, or after Social Security pays you, or wherever your money's coming in from, after they pay you, then you pay yourself, and then you start to spend the rest. A great way to save is doing automatic savings. There's studies that shown that, if you have the choice to save versus setting it up automatically, automatic is the way to go. I like to do my automatic savings. I like to just have it come out on the day that the money hits my account. That way it comes in and I already saved before I even saw what I have to spend. And then a good rule of thumb is if you can save 20% of your income, that's always a great savings amount if you can do so. So those are some good rules to go by. Now I want to talk through some resources, and let's get to Q&A. So if you have questions, just remember, put it in the chat so that we can talk about it. We want to, if you have some good savings questions, or even if you have some other good savings tips, we can put them in the chat as well. use the Q&A feature. So here's some AARP resources that can help you with what we talked about. So AARP Money Map, we have what's called the Savings Planner, and I'll drop this resource in the chat before we finish, and it's also going to go out in the guide that's going to get sent to you after the call. So check your email. You're going to get the links to all the tools that I'm sharing. So AARP Money Map is a phenomenal tool. The idea is that it's going to be able to it's going to be a map of every financial thing that you can work on, every area that you can work on: savings, budgeting, managing an emergency, how to manage an emergency expense, anything like that. It's going to be in Money Map, and they're building more and more modules as we go. But right now we do have the savings planner one. So if you're not the natural saver, then you could use this and find great ways to create savings goals, build your emergency fund, and build your savings. If you are a saver, you might get some great tips and tricks in here that you may not already be using. So it could be a great tool for you too. So look at our savings planner module with AARP Money Map. The other one is AARP Debt Manager. So we talked about creating a debt plan and saving for debt. So one of the things that you can do is go to our AARP Money Map and go to the Debt Manager section. So with the Debt Manager, you put all your debt in there, and they help you to create a plan. They'll help you create a budget. They'll help you list out all your debt, and they're going to actually give you a pay down plan of the best way to eliminate your debt. And so feel free to look at that. And it's a really cool model that they use. They have a model that's going to help you to save money as you pay down your debt. So they look at a mix of they use a formula that helps you to do pay down your most expensive debt first. And then there's Interview an Advisor. As I mentioned, we have a great tool that will help you find a financial professional, and the best professional for you. If you go through this module, it's going to ask you a series of questions. You're going to be able to do some have some checklists before you meet with an advisor. We have some follow-up that you can do after you meet with an advisor, so that we can make sure that you find the best person for you. One of the most important things that you need is to work with a financial professional that's going to work in your favor. So we make sure that we talk to you about how to do that. Because we want to educate you. We also want to protect you, because we know that there are some every financial professional is not created the same. Some are best for you. Others are great salespeople, and they'll tell you that they're best for you. And we want to make sure that you get the person that's best for you. So use AARP Interview and use the Interview and Advisor tool in order to do that. So let's get to some questions and comments. So feel free to use the chat. As I mentioned, we still have about 16 minutes so we can answer questions. I'm going to go to the Q&A tool. And if there's a question that's in the chat, we'll make sure that we catch those too. But to start, so I see Nancy, I see someone asked about consolidation. So if you were to consolidate your credit cards, I remember this question came up while we were talking about credit cards. So what is consolidation? So consolidation, that's that process of so let's say you have 5 credit cards and they all have balances. When someone consolidates, what they're looking to do is turn that into one loan and make one payment on those credit cards. So now, it's a little more, it can be a little more organized, but there can be some pros and cons to both, right? So with the consolidation, you may be paying a higher monthly payment than you would have paid if you were just paying all those credit cards individually. And then, so in that case, that can, it may not free up your margin. It may cause you to have a little less margin by you consolidating. And that's in some cases, right? So what you want to do is call your bank or call your credit union and ask them about a consolidation loan, and just tell them you want to hear about it. You want to know the terms, you want to know the interest rates. You can tell them what your credit cards are, and so that they can then see them and tell you how much they can approve you for. But with that, you'll be able to see it, because in some cases it can be a little out of control. You got 7 credit cards, you're making all these payments, you're missing them and paying late fees, and that can be a little tough in some cases. So what you prefer to do is, in some cases, you may prefer to do a consolidation loan and pay it down that way. And then, so that's something that you can do. pay it down through a consolidation. But listen to it, ask them about all the numbers. How much is your monthly payment going to be? What's your interest rate going to be? Because while you may get a lower interest rate, you may have a higher payment, and make sure that the terms work out for you before you decide to take on that expense or take on that loan. Because so it's just something to think about. But it's, it may work, it may not, but you ask as many questions as you can and write down as many numbers as you can before you make the decision. All right, now see, what's the best account to keep your emergency savings in that's liquid? Okay, so there are a few options. Let's talk about credit, where to keep your emergency fund and ways that you can save it. So you have some different things that you can do, because here's one of the things about emergency funds. In a lot of emergencies, you may not have to tap all of the money at once. And 6 months of expenses. Now, remember, you're talking to a grower here. I like to see my money grow. 6 months worth of your expenses could be a significant chunk of money. And if it's sitting in a regular savings account, we know it's getting very, very little interest. So some of the things that you may be able to do is you could look at high yield savings accounts. There are some savings accounts, and a lot of times these high yield savings accounts, they're with banks that are just solely online. They may not have a brick and mortar space, and by them not having a brick and mortar space, they're able to give you higher interest rates on your savings. So that's one place where you could put your money, where you may be able to save a little more than you did if it was just sitting in a regular bank savings account. The other thing some people consider in your high yield savings account, while it's liquid, you may still have to give like a 2 to 3 day with notice before you can withdraw your money. So still liquid, but it's not just it may not be a in the moment transfer. But we know with most emergencies, they're not always an in the moment transfer, right? You may have a couple of days before you're making a payment. So then you're able to make that transfer. Some of the other things, so Stephen just put a great resource in. So bank rates, so they're showing the different rates on different savings accounts. But a high yield savings, or HYSA is what you may see. That can be one option so that you get a little more interest. Some people like to go the money market route so that their money is in an account where it can slightly fluctuate, but it's not an aggressive fluctuation. I've also seen in some cases where people use so there's one that a T-bill. So you can use, some people use T-bills, some people use CDs, some people use all the names escaping me right now. Someone's going to be able to say it in the chat. I know you're probably thinking about it, but it's another account where you can do small short-term. You can put your money into it short-term, and you'll have a bit of a contract to know how much interest you're going to get on that money by leaving it with the bank. Yep. So there's CDs, but there's another one, and the name is escaping me. It'll come to me and then I'll say it. But it's very similar to a CD, but you can get them through your banks as well. But these are some of the options of ways that you can save. I mentioned money market, annuity. There it is. I knew it was coming, an annuity. So some people would do a short-term annuity as well as ways that you can kind of grow some of your money while it's sitting there. So these are some of the different options that, while it's not, and in some of those with a money market, with an annuity or a CD, you may have a small penalty if you withdraw it early, but it's a way that you could still kind of grow some of your money instead of leaving it all in a bank account. So these are just some of the different things that I've seen and different options. But you'd want to review it and make sure that it's the right one for you. You don't want to just kind of, every option won't be best for you in your case. So I see our AARP advisors, fiduciaries. So AARP, we don't have advisors specifically. What that tool is going to do is help you find the right type of advisor. And we'll even show you some places where you could go and look up advisors. And just kind of research advisors. So you want to take a look at that and just make sure that you are. But a fiduciary is a good place to that's a good threshold for the type of advisor you may want. So a financial professional that's a fiduciary, that's someone that is legal. They're obligated to work in your best interest. So they're not pushing products on you just to make a profit. They have to by their standards, they have to operate in a way that's in your best interest. So a lot of certified financial planners are going to be fiduciaries. But if you go through that interview and advisor tool, they're going to walk you through things like that and make sure that you know the type of person that you want to find. All right. So let's see. Our next question. What about using your savings to pay down your credit card? All right, so Yolanda, that's going to be that's a very specific one. So it's a touchy one, right? Because you'd want more I'd want more information before I just answer that outright. Because in some cases, you know, if there's no other safety net, or if there's not a lot of savings, then that can be a tricky one. So the idea, a lot of people, they save and pay down credit cards at the same time, or they'll focus on paying down their credit cards before savings. But if let's imagine if you were trying to use the last of your savings to pay down a credit card, and then you needed that savings for something else, then that could be a tricky situation. So it's hard to answer that one without having more detail. But you do want to make sure that if you do have savings, if you have enough income that you can aggressively pay down that debt, then you can do so. It's not a bad idea to just aggressively pay down with debt. But then, if it was a part of your savings, or if you knew that there was going to be more savings coming, or that you could build it back up pretty fast, then that's something you may want to consider, or you may want to think about. But there's a lot of different scenarios within that. And there's more questions I want to know before I just outright told someone use your savings to pay down your credit cards, because that's a touchy one, and you want to make sure that you have the right that you're getting the right guidance. That's one where you may want to use interview and advisor to talk to a financial professional, because after you have that conversation, they could give you more advice specific to you. So that's something to think about. And let's see, are there any more questions coming in? Or any in the chat that I missed? Are you seeing any?
There's a question about the recent bank closing, the Silicon Valley Bank closing, and then yesterday we heard about Credit Suisse. So should we be concerned about banks? I don't know if it's really so early right now to comment on this.
It is. Yeah, it's kind of early to know. We don't, it's hard to say that, yeah, it's kind of hard to say. So we have, in that case, if we're still with our big FDIC insured banks, then in most cases, you're going to be fine, right? So you want to, if you're with a bank or a credit union that's FDIC insured, then you at least that if something was to happen to that bank, that your funds are going to be insured, and that you're going to get your money back. It's hard to still say, and it's still so early to say that if all banks are dangerous or anything like that, because we don't know. But we've all been banking for years, and the first rule of thumb is make sure that it's FDIC insured.
There's one more question that we can end with. Do you have any examples for passive income makers in retirement?
So in retirement, so there's some of the things that I mentioned earlier about just ways that you can use your property to make money. Those aren't bad. I would say go to AARP. I believe it's AARP/work. So we have a list of resources for gig workers, for working from home, and some things like that. Some of the other things that you can think about when you say like passive income, it would be, let's see, for passive, I'd say, it's tough when we think about just passive income makers. I'd say start with the AARP work page to look and just see some of the things that they mentioned, but it would have to be some things that you put in place, like renting out space or things like that. And in some cases, if you were renting out space or doing real estate, you could use a property manager or something like that, so that you don't have to be heavily involved, because that's some of the things we want to stay away from. Ways that you want to find ways to make money without being involved. Or if you have a car that's just sitting, you could be renting that car out, and you could have someone managing that for you. I've seen that in some cases where people are just renting your actual vehicle, so your personal property, you rent it out, you have insurance on it and everything else, but people can use it without you having to be too heavily involved. So that's something to think about. And yes, if it's, as long as it's, those online high yield savings accounts, those banks are FDIC insured, and just check and make sure that you ask that before you put your money in. But you do want to make sure that it's any bank that you use, you want to make sure that it's FDIC insured. And I see someone even mention renting out your driveway. Yeah, if you have space, unused space, there are ways to make money using your unused space.
And I think the chat transcript, I can make that available when I send out the email. Yes, that's a good note to ask about that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there was lots of good advice in the chat.
Yeah, for sure. So this has been great as always, Martin. We will have you back again probably later on in the year. And somebody had a great suggestion that maybe we should just do a webinar on paying down debt.
Oh, that'd be a good one. There's so
Yeah,
many.
just
so much good
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So I think you got a lot of new fans. The chat is full of praise, and I appreciate you, Martin, as always. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Remember to find other programs and opportunities at aarp.org/near-you or near me. Either one of them works. Okay. Thank you, Martin. Take care.
Good. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.